Yeah, it's probably something I used to struggle with quite a bit, especially if we didn't have a very good game, or if we lost an important game. Then, like all professional rugby players, probably our own harshest critics. So it'd really eat me up. I'd sort of lock myself away for days on end, and I wouldn't really look forward to turning up to work the next week. But as you get older, you sort of put things into perspective, use different techniques. So I want to see a sports psychologist, and I think the things on this app would, if I'd have had them back then and known what I did now, I think I'd have been in a much better place throughout my career. But as I've got older, tried different things, found out what works for me, and you soon come to realise that rugby's not the be all and end all. There's a lot more to life than whether you win or lose on the weekend. Don't get me wrong, it's very important, but I feel like I'm a lot more level human being now, in terms of it's never as bad as what you think it is, and it's never as good as what you think it is. So I think with experience, I'm a much more rounded person now, and much more able to deal with the highs and lows of professional sport.
Sounds like just general life experience, actually, that be a professional sports person or not, that actually you do get to understand the stresses and strains and compartmentalise almost parts of it as you go, and it becomes an easier thing to do. Has the game changed much in that regard for you, in terms of that thing that you spoke about, sort of locking yourself away post a performance, poor or otherwise? Has the game changed very much in terms of those open conversations about that kind of thing? Yeah,
I think that there's not so much of a stigma regarding mental well-being anymore. I think at the time I felt like I'd been probably, it was not a very manly thing to do, go and admit that you needed sort of help with something, but I think it's something that's been spoken about quite a bit over the last few years, and I think people have soon come to realise that it's probably your mental well-being is probably as important as how physically fit you are and the tactics you employ in the field. If I'm feeling good, then chances are I'm gonna play well on the weekend. It's not always going to be the case, but you give yourself a much better chance. So over the years it's learning what works for you, and I just wish that I'd sort of taken these steps earlier on in my career. Maybe I wouldn't have had maybe there's some of the inconsistencies that I have experienced over the years.
Yeah, because it can depend on a bunch of factors, can't it? Because you can have all the structures in place, and you might end up working for a coach, I'm not going to name any names, who might not necessarily be in their wheelhouse, that thing of, listen, we're going to give you the time to come and talk about this thing. They might be otherwise minded. It's quite dependent on a lot of fleeting factors, it strikes me.
Yeah, it is. And I've been a serious sports psychologist, and I used to live with John and Davis, the 13, and we used to have a conversation about it, and I tell him, this guy's really worked for me, this has worked, and he gave it a go, and it didn't work for him. But I think the important thing was that he'd tried it, and it's not one size fits all. It's not, one thing's not going to work for everyone. So I think it's important, especially as a youngster coming up with your career, or just a young person, really, just finding out, trying different things, seeing what works for you, and trying to become that as well as a well-balanced human being as you possibly can. I think whether you're playing professional sports or whatever other job you do, if like Rhys mentioned earlier, the happier you are and more content you are with yourself as a person, the more productive you're going to be, or the more successful, I think.
You've mentioned the peaks and the troughs there, and understanding that it's never as bad as you think or never as good as you think. Do you feel that was kind of very evident in your career come, say, 2014, that you had seen the unbelievable highs of 2011 and then 2014 with your own fans at times booing you? That must have been a particularly tough time, and you must have looked around and thought, God, this really was never as good as I thought. And surely in hindsight now you look back and say to yourself, well, I thought that was an absolutely horrendous experience. It was, but it's not as bad as I initially thought.
Yeah, I think it was sort of my own fault that it got to that stage, whereas, like I mentioned earlier, I sort of cut myself away from the world. I'd sort of let myself stew over things, and in the long run that wasn't going to help my performance the week after. So I wish I'd had the techniques that I have now, where I sort of taken a step back, reflect on things, and sort of been a lot more proactive in terms of my preparation for the week, but in terms of looking after myself as well. And I'm 100% confident I wouldn't have got to that stage, but there we are. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, and there we are. Learned from it now, and I since I've sort of got since I've got a little bit older and had a little bit more experience, I feel like I'm a much more consistent person off the field and on it. I don't think I get those highs and lows anymore.
Do you feel that the fans sometimes wrongfully think it's open season whenever they want on a player?
I'm not too sure, but I wouldn't hold anything against supporters. I think I struggle when I go to watch a game and I'm sat in the crowd, and honestly I wish I had earplugs in there, because some of the stuff I hear, I'm thinking, have you ever watched a game before?
Yeah.
And But there we are. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. It's just unfortunately sort of social media and things like that makes everyone think they're an expert these days.